Where's Chris Olave? He's not on there?
I don't think Chris Olave is going to be significantly better than he was last year.
Well, let's start right with that. Chris Olave is on Chris's breakout list, and I don't know what I'm allowed to say about the draft we did yesterday, so I won't say much because it's our magazine draft, but I was one pick away from getting Chris Olave. I was really mad that I did not get Chris Olave, but I love him, Chris. You have him on your breakout list. Do you think he will be significantly better than last year? He was something like wide receiver 20 last year.
Yeah, and there's a big part of me that thinks he might just be a better player than Garrett Wilson based on their rookie seasons. Now, that's tough because, Wilson was much more productive in college than Chris Olave, but the biggest thing for me is just I think the offensive environment that he's going to be in New Orleans is going to be a lot more promising for passing production. I think the decision to trade for Derek Carr, I don't necessarily believe Derek Carr is going to be this massive upgrade over what they got because they averaged 7.8 yards per pass attempt last season. They had a 4.7% touchdown rate for their quarterbacks last year. That was actually pretty good. I think the biggest thing is the fact that they went out and traded for Derek Carr. They signed Derek Carr. The fact that they went out and decided to get that upgrade at quarterback, or at least potential upgrade, indicates that they want to throw the ball more. This is a team that only threw the ball 512 times last season. I think you probably add 50 to 60 pass attempts on top of that for 2023. Chris Olave was one of the few guys who was able to earn a high target share on a lot of downfield targets, which is always a really good combination. And so I think this is a situation where even if his target share doesn't grow from last season, he's going to improve on the 119 targets. And I just think he's a super talented player.
And that's the thing is, like, both of these teams went out and I would say the Jets paid more to go get Aaron Rodgers. And the upgrade of Aaron Rodgers versus whatever that was for the Jets last year, I think is much larger than the upgrade of Derek Carr over Andy Dalton, if there even is one. And then
the one distinction there, though, the Jets already threw 627 passes last year.
Right.
Olave's target share was higher than Garrett Wilson's.
I think the volume portion of it is the only thing. Like, I think the quality of targets are going to increase much more for Wilson than Olave.
Sure.
I do think the total team volume could, although the Saints have been really low in pass attempts 3 years in a row. I believe every year that they've had, is it Pete Carmichael calling plays, basically since Drew Brees started losing it. But the other thing is, like, they throw 60 more passes this year, which is very possible. I could take 60 exactly to get them to league median. Their number 2 wide receiver last year had 39 targets.
Right.
If Michael Thomas is playing, their number 2 wide receiver is going to have no fewer than 120 targets.
Sure.
By the way, I oversold Chris Olave because he was actually number 27 per game. So in that respect, I definitely think he can be a lot better than he was last year. By the way, the Jets threw for more yards than the Saints last year. That might surprise people. And
115 more attempts.
Yeah, but they did. But if you just think about the environment that Garrett Wilson was in, there were more attempts, there were more yards. Statistically, I don't know how you feel about this, Heath, but Garrett Wilson versus Chris Olave. Olave had a higher yards per catch, higher yards per target, higher yards per route run, more fantasy points per target, higher catch rate, and a higher ADOT. So, why the big...
That's the thing. 26% target share for Chris Olave on a 14.2 yard ADOT. That is like legitimate number 1 alpha wide receiver kind of stuff. It's, if we're going to comp Garrett Wilson to Devontae Adams, it's the kind of thing you see from a Devontae Adams type. I don't think Chris Olave is that good. He's certainly a different type of player, more of a burner, but that to me just suggests an incredibly high baseline level of talent and skills in an offense that didn't really throw the ball down the field very much last season. He was basically the only guy they were willing to throw the ball downfield to.
Well, until Rashid Shaheed got going at the end of the year and averaged 17 yards a catch. But I'm not trying to argue against Chris Olave. I just think comparing Chris Olave's rate stats and efficiency stats last year to Garrett Wilson's, I don't think you can use that as an argument that Olave is better. Because the quarterbacks they were catching passes from were completely different.
Sure.
Garrett Wilson probably had a better quarterback in college than he had last year. Chris Olave had an NFL starting quarterback.
Yeah, I don't think anybody feels that way about Andy Dalton except for you, but fine.
Well, I mean,
Dalton.
I know you say that, and it's a good laugh line, but he did average 7.6 yards per attempt and had a QB rating of 95 and had a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He was every advanced metric you can find. I think maybe there's one or two that'll disagree. Say that Andy Dalton was a much better passer than Daniel Jones last year.
Okay, he had the second highest passer rating of his career. So the year before, he had a 76.9 passer rating. He had the
the guy's
yards,
made
second highest yards.
162 passes in the NFL. He's an NFL quarterback.
He's not that good. He's not that good.
Either way,
I'm comfortable saying Dalton's not that good. You think Dalton's good?
Derek Carr's not that good.
Either way, the Saints had an opportunity to just bring back Andy Dalton, and they decided to pay a lot more for Derek Carr. So whether we think Derek Carr is an upgrade on Andy Dalton, the Saints certainly do. And
I may have
that's
gone from 25th to 18th.
Sure. And I don't think Chris Olave should be ranked ahead of Garrett Wilson.
Right.
There's a significant gap in the way they're perceived, and I think that makes sense. But I'm just saying I like Chris Olave a lot. I like what he showed as a rookie, and I think the opportunity for yes, if Michael Thomas stays healthy, well, okay. Yeah, it could be 2019 again, but I don't have a time machine. I don't know about you guys. So it's possible Michael Thomas stays healthy, but we're on year 4 of saying that.
Yeah, mine's in the shop, so I can't really help. All right, let's go to another breakout here from Chris. J.K. Dobbins and David Montgomery. Interesting picks here. All right, let's start with Dobbins. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been relatively lower on Dobbins and in the time that he's been in the NFL, mostly just because I think the situation has been overrated. The way that offense has operated under Greg Roman in particular has been, we're basically never going to give anyone more than 15 carries per game. It's happened in 15% of their games since Lamar Jackson took over as quarterback or something. I'm hoping with the change at offensive coordinator, a different offense. Yes, they're going to throw more. Hopefully that'll be good for Lamar Jackson, but hopefully that also means that they're not going to cycle their running backs out as much. I don't think there's much pass catching upside for J.K. Dobbins, but if he can get to averaging around 15 carries per game rather than maxing out around 15 carries per game, which is mostly where he's been, the fact that he's been such a hyper efficient runner in that offense, I think is going to make him, a potential 1,300-yard rusher with 10 touchdowns. I think it's probably low-end RB1 upside, but he can absolutely get there. So
he went in the amazing draft that should be used for the rest of the summer. He went 46th, and he went 3 picks after David Montgomery. So this was a run of actually, James Conner in this round, which is surprising. But Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, Miles Sanders, Travis Etienne, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Dameon Pierce. This round 4, Aaron Jones was in there too. I think that's 10. That's 9 running backs. Anyway, Chris, real quick, I'll throw it to you. Who do you like better, real quick, Montgomery or Dobbins?
I believe I have Dobbins ranked ahead.
All right, Heath, the floor is yours.
I was just laughing because I think that round of running backs that you just read through is like a 5-round range for me in fantasy drafts where I would take those guys. Definitely a 4-round. But I think there are both 3rd rounders and 7th rounders that all went in the 4th round of this very accurate draft that will definitely be determinative.
That's good.
I love J.K. Dobbins, the player. I'm hopeful. I don't have any sort of grasp at all as to what they're going to do in terms of sharing running back touches, throwing to running backs, or even total rush attempts. It seems strange to me it seems like Lamar's going to throw more. Are all of those pass attempts coming out of his rush attempts? Or are we going to have even fewer running back rush attempts than we've had the past couple of years? I don't know. So I'm not out on Dobbins, and I think he's the type of player that I think if he had Nick Chubb's health and touches the last few years, he may have done exactly what Nick Chubb did. Yeah. I think he's almost that good.
How many catches for Dobbins?
Oh, that's one that I don't think you could tell me we're going to get training camp reports. Oh, they're using J.K. Dobbins more as receiver. I'm not going to buy it. I think 25 to 30 is the ceiling.
I have him at 21 projected.
Yeah, I have a note here. Let's see, I think it was Devontae Freeman a few years ago had 34 catches in 16 games. In that year, Baltimore was actually 9th in pass attempts, but they did at least show that they were willing to throw to the running back that year. All right, but there's a lot of unknowns. All right, as far as Montgomery, this is a guy who's been a top 12 running back before, so explain the breakout call on Montgomery.
Yeah, it's, these terms are all fluid, and if you want to call it a bounce back or something like that, but I think he's going from what was not really a particularly good situation for a fantasy running back to even splitting with Jahmyr Gibbs, what might be a really, really good situation for him, because we saw Jamal Williams get 260 carries, 17 touchdowns, was it? Basically no role in the passing game. I don't think David Montgomery's likely to have anything close to the how many touchdowns was it? 17?
17, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to that, but I think 10 is a pretty realistic number. This is a team that clearly wants to run the ball. That's a big part of their identity in Detroit. And if he can just do what Jamal Williams did as a rusher and be twice as effective, 3 times as effective as a pass catcher, which I think is reasonable, I think there's a lot of room for David Montgomery to have a big season. I think there's RB1 upside here, not the RB1, but top 12.
I have got him at RB19 in my projections, 1 spot ahead of Najee Harris. I did want to say, Chris, that you should have done a little more research before bringing him as a breakout, because the disparity in Adam and I's opinion on Andy Dalton is only rivaled by the disparity in Adam and I's opinion on David Montgomery. Adam thinks David Montgomery is the 2nd worst running back in the NFL, ahead of only Jamal Williams. But
it's an upgrade, is what you're saying.
Right. Yes. He's never had blocking like he's going to have this season. What we're going to find out, he had a lot of times where he had to break a couple of tackles before he even got to the line of scrimmage. And the problem with David Montgomery was he doesn't ever actually get going. And so there's no big plays. Well, I always gave him credit for the fact, that's because he has to dodge 2 guys in the backfield on his way. I think he will have more targets than Jamal Williams. I think he'll definitely have more carries than Jahmyr Gibbs. I like him better than Gibbs.
Yeah, I think there's room for Gibbs to get 175 carries and 65 targets, and for Montgomery to still get 240 carries and 50 targets.
So I've got 266 and 40 for Montgomery. I've got 122 and 76 for Gibbs.
By the way, for what it's worth, according to Pro Football Focus, the Bears had the 5th highest run blocking grade in the NFL last year. The Lions had the 9th best. So again, we can sit here and talk about this narrative that everything about the Bears was bad, but going into the year, all I heard was he's got a mobile quarterback. His efficiency is going to go up. Well, it didn't. And Khalil Herbert was so much better than him 2 years in a row in terms of efficiency. His offensive line stinks. Well, according to Pro Football Focus, which especially with the individual player grades, I don't really put much stock into those. But they watch all these. We don't. They said they were the 5th best run blocking team, which to me means they were good. It may not mean they were the 5th best, but it means they were good. And his efficiency stunk. He's slow and he can't make big plays. It's a problem.
I don't really expect him to make big plays. I think the thing is, in this Detroit offense, the way they run their offense, Dan Campbell wants to bite your kneecaps off and all that stuff, which is all just proxy for we want to run the ball a lot. I don't really think he has to be that good. Jamal Williams averaged 4.1 yards per carry and rushed for 1,100 yards last season. There's going to be a lot of opportunities there. I would guess he's going to be the primary goal line option there. It's possible Jahmyr Gibbs supersedes him, but I don't expect that to happen. And so even if Gibbs is healthier and better than DeAndre Swift, I think there's still an opportunity here for David Montgomery to get to 1,300, 1,400 total yards and double-digit touchdowns at a price that is very reasonable. I mean, you're talking about a 4th-round pick in most drafts.
Also, and we've either got to say, well, I guess you can just do both, but we do this, and I did it too. I think Andy Dalton's almost as good as Derek Carr. Well, the Saints went and paid $100 million for Derek Carr.
Right.
They could have had Andy Dalton. Well, Khalil Herbert was obviously much better than David Montgomery each of the past 2 seasons, but the Bears never would give Khalil Herbert as much work as David Montgomery. Well,
We'll find out.
it's right.
Well, they didn't when both were on the team, at least.
I'm just saying that, Montgomery may be better at other things like pass protection and, just understanding the offense. He might be more reliable, but I feel like he should have rushed for more yards, and certainly more yards per carry.
Well,
but,
and catching the ball too. He was almost double Khalil Herbert in yards per target.
He was good at that. My concern with Montgomery would be if Jahmyr Gibbs is an elite talent in the second half of the season, and maybe it's even earlier than that, then he'll start losing carries to Jahmyr Gibbs, and Gibbs would be the primary running back, not in a 16 to 18 carry, but like a 13.
Sure,
I don't think so.
Well, no,
no,
I look at it like Alvin Kamara. Like Alvin Kamara is
Exactly.
a 99th percentile outcome for Jahmyr Gibbs. If he's even close to as good as Alvin Kamara is, that's absolutely worth the 12th overall pick. Well, I don't know, but probably.
Yeah.
And there was still a lot of room for other running backs in the Saints offense. And the Saints offense is different from Detroit's, but Detroit's last season in particular was very, very good for fantasy running back.
But Ingram was great.
I think it was top 3.
Ingram was great. That's what I'm saying. If Montgomery's not getting the job done, that would be my concern.